Hello, friends. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Carl Sterling, and I'm coming at you from the Syracuse, New York area. Today, I have a guest on my program, somebody who I've known for a few years now. His name is Dr. Joseph Berry, and he also has a radio show here in the area, which you can catch on 570 WSYR. It's still at noon to 1, right on Sundays.
That's right, Carl. It's right now the first Sunday of the month.
First Sunday of the month. Okay, great.
I'm thinking about going back to weekly.
Great. Well, Dr. Berry, first of all, thanks for taking the time and joining me today. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Carl.
Great. Yeah, my connection here is a little rough here. Can you hear me okay?
Carl, good to see you, Zombie.
Great, good. Yeah, it's good to be home. No more travel. So, Dr. Berry, I love your radio show, first of all.
Thank you.
You bring up some great topics, and your thought process and your approach to things is intriguing me, which is one of the reasons I wanted to get you on here and start, talking and share some of your insights. So you are, let's see, preventive medicine and internal medicine. Tell me, where do the roots go back to as far as wanting to be a doctor or knowing that I'm going to be a doctor?
Well, that's my father was a doctor, and so people always assumed I would go in that trade. I was one of 6 kids, and my sister's a doctor as well. Then I have a brother, a lawyer, but we try not to hold that against him. So I wanted to do something that would meld science and dealing with people, because I like science and I like dealing with people. And I was looking for something that would meld those two together. And it wasn't, I think, until halfway through Cornell undergrad that I said, I think I could do pre-med. I could do something in medicine. Who knows? And then it wasn't until I was almost finished with that residency that I asked my dad to join him again here in Syracuse, where I practiced for 30 years until my eyes were opened up, and I changed my practice completely. And that was a book that had the audacity to suggest the outrageous concept that diet was the chief determinant of your health. And that just blew my mind, because unfortunately, all of my doctor colleagues have been trained and continue to be trained in such a small, even people that do primary care and think, well, we handle everything, from acne to the pustular psoriasis of unsuch. But the fact is, they evaluate it, and then they give you either diagnosis, some procedure, or some therapy, typically medicine. And my profession just got blindfolded to the idea, well, wait a second, what's the cause? And if you go to your rheumatologist today and ask, what's the cause of lupus or Lyme disease, they're going to say, it's inflammation. That's all I know. It's inflammation. Maybe there's genes involved. I have no idea. But I do know how to diagnose it, and I do know how to give you pills for it. That didn't satisfy me anymore. And when I read a book that said, no, I've proven 1,000 times that by modifying the diet, you can modify not only people's appreciation of their health, but also these very important markers. You could make a person with lupus have that lupus go away. You could have a person with rheumatoid arthritis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, all proven by separate pathologists and blood, and then have it all normalized by changing the diet. So that's completely what transformed my practice. And I'm not really sure. I try and give this information to other doctor friends of mine, and they really don't receptive. It's not their business. They weren't trained that way. So I struggle mightily to say nice things about my profession, because we're in trouble. We continue to just treat, I think it was Steve Jobs that said, treatment is doomed to fail. And if the computer guy knows it, why don't doctors know it?
Well, first of all, I'm so glad you went into that right off, because that's exactly what I really wanted to get to, because I know this about you, especially from your radio show. So I applaud you for your work and your change there. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I have countless books I'm reading all the time about, diet affecting everything. Diet is the root of inflammation, the root of disease, the root of this and that. And I think the data is pretty much out there. That's the real stuff. I mean, that we can make so many changes with diet. So this is so great to have you doing this and going down that pathway, because now we can get to the bottom of things a lot of times and make some changes. Maybe I love how the lupus can go away. Type 2 diabetes, that can go away too, from what I understand. Is that correct?
There are now websites you can up for on the internet that will help each individual person adjust their particular diet. And you have this, this service on a regular basis. You can get rid of all your diabetic medicines.
Wow.
I believe that most diabetics, if they just could make this transformation and start to restrict carbohydrates in an important way, they have to understand that sugar is an addiction, that we're trained to want sugar. Sugar was super seasonal, and now it's year-round. We have summer 24/7 at the Walmarts and Wegmans, and it's just too much for us. And again, doctors have lots to blame, because we told the public, going all the way back to Angel Keys, that carbohydrates were bad, that fats were bad, and that therefore eliminate fats from our diet. And when we did that, our health deteriorated just as much as our ancestors' health deteriorated when they started incorporating grain into their diet. The so-called Neolithic revolution. People say, oh, we've had grains for 10,000 years. And I go, precisely. We've had grains for 10,000 years. And all that time, the bones have gotten smaller, weaker. It's not me. All the people that specialize in this talk about this. They may argue over what diet was primarily vegetarian or carnivore or omnivore, but none of them argue over the fact that when we started incorporating grains and domesticating animals, that our overall health declined, at least as far as the fossil record can tell us. And we're doing the same thing now with sugar. We got rid of tobacco by pricing the heck out of it, at least in part. And again, my profession, when the Surgeon General, after 10 years and 3,000 articles saying smoking was bad, when the Surgeon General came out with that idea, we should put a warning on cigarettes. The AMA, my professional organization, said, hold on now, that's just one talking. He doesn't speak for us. So I'm afraid that my profession has gone array, and it's taken the public with it. We've told people, eat comfort foods, that carbohydrate. We've told people milk and cereal is breakfast, and unfortunately, nothing could be farther from the truth.
Wow, man! I'll tell you. This kind of stuff actually really turns me on in a way. It excites me. It gets my wheels thinking. I actually first met you at your house when I was doing a little gig there in your backyard with Marco Pani. So
that goes way back.
This has got to be 10, 15 years ago.
At least 10 years ago.
Yeah, down in Lafayette or somewhere like that, I think, right? So, anyways, we're there, and I think we did a couple years in a row there, and I saw you here and there, different things. So sometimes I lose my train of thought. So I was a musician. That was my gig. And then I had gained a lot of weight. So fast forward when I was 70 pounds heavier, and my doctor told me, who's since retired, you've got to get your act together, man, and start changing a lot of stuff, your diet, this and that, exercise. So gradually that got me into the world of fitness and training. I decided I felt so good, maybe I could help people to feel good by training them. Then a couple of years into that, like 9 years ago, I went to SU for nutrition. I should be careful what I say here, because I actually work at SU now. Well, I'm not working because of COVID, but I will work there again. I'd say the nutrition program is what you could expect from most nutrition programs in most colleges. And they're not going into much of this that you're talking about here. But I did learn by reaching outside more that, wow, man, there's some stuff we can do to really change our bodies. I don't mean to talk about me too much, but I just want to tell one story that how diet changed everything for me. And this is about 8 years ago. I was chronic upper respiratory infections all the time, 2.5 years of it. I cut out wheat, grains, gluten, just for fun, just to try it, alcohol, all dairy. In a week, I was breathing through both nostrils at the same time. That never happened. And a month later, I was 10 pounds lighter. About a month, 2.5 months later, I was 20 pounds lighter, and I had energy. And that got me reading a lot of these books, and that's where I don't know how long you've been doing that radio show. How many years has it been now? It's been a while.
3 or 4 now.
Okay. Yeah, at some point in the game, somebody told me about the show, and I tuned in. So diet is, it seems like, I know in my work with people with movement disorders and all these conferences that I've been to and spoken at and teaching I've done, they talk a lot about inflammation in the gut, the bowels, is maybe traveling up the vagus nerve and manifesting into a problem in the brain. So there we go with diet again, causing a lot of issues. Tell me more. I'd love to know more. For example, do you mind sharing the name of the book that changed how you were thinking about things?
Yeah, the book in particular was called The Plant Paradox by Dr. Stephen Gundry. And he, again, I wasn't trained to think that way, and it embarrasses me to say that, but the concept that a tomato, for instance, or the corn plant, which seems so healthy and natural, would not want to be eaten by me. Squirrels can run away, deer sure as heck can, but plants can't go anywhere. They have to have their own defense system.
Mm-hmm.
We talked to nutritionists, and they, when I interviewed here in Skinny Atlas, lovely lady, and we agreed about many things, including the importance of the microbiome. But as far as she was concerned, if it came out of the ground, it was good for you.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just said that I think the evidence says that it's not true. Certainly, and there's a fabulous researcher also from Cornell, Sally Norton, and you've got to track her down because she talks about oxalates. And as Dr. Gundry talks about lectins, these components of plants that our ancestors and therefore the bugs in our gut own cells are not used to dealing with, our immune system, that there are plants. So people will tell me, well, every time I have spaghetti sauce, I get indigestion. And therefore I take a Prilosec or a Pepsid. I tell them, you're an idiot. Every time you have something that you eat that bothers you, you write it down. You don't eat that again. It's your body. Your stomach can't send you a text message. Your stomach doesn't have a hashtag on tweet. You don't eat me. And instead, that's because we're arrogant Americans, we say, no, I'm going to eat that stuff. Even though I know it bothers me, then I'm going to take a pill afterwards to try and make it right. It cannot make it right. So, sure, microbiome is incredibly important. We're only now starting to understand it. I think we're going to have diseases treated by fecal transplant, just as we give people a pill for headache or a pill for weight loss. I think instead give them frozen stool from super fit people that will recolonize their colon and the small intestine and fundamentally change their health. I think the food eating, the Motrin we're taking, the Prilosec, all these pills we're shoveling down our gut have an adverse effect, including the fact that it's all been doused with glyphosate, Roundup, which also
oh boy, there you go,
bacterial pathways in the gut. So you're not taking tryptophan and making serotonin. It's a mess in there. And when we put more and more chemicals, people are thank God they put the stop on those Girl Scout cookies. There's absolutely nothing healthy in a Girl Scout cookie. There's nothing natural about it. You can put a Girl Scout cookie and an Oreo and probably a Big Mac on the countertop and have them undisturbed for decades. Real food, erodes, deteriorates.
Yeah, right.
That stuff doesn't.
Right.
And I used to, like all doctors, I used to think at the organ level. Well, how's your brain? How's your stomach? How's your heart? How's your kidneys? And now with the help of doctors like Dr. Sherry Rogers, I've learned, no, you've got to get down at the molecular level. If insulin isn't right, if the omega-3 and omega-6 ratio of the oils in your body isn't right, how can you possibly carry on the chemical processes to get an optimum result? And I look at everyone now walking around as big, gushy bags of chemical reactions. And if you're drinking soda, how is that possibly going to aid the chemical reactions in your body? So when I tell people they've got to get better and healthier, I tell them, you don't have to automatically adopt. I don't recommend the Gundry diet because it's a super aggressive diet. particularly designed for the sickest amongst us.
Mhm.
But anyone can get it. Autoimmune diet or anti-inflammatory diet. And as you said, they're going to have the same components. No alcohol, no sugar, no wheat, no dairy, cut down the processed foods. That's a great start. But for people that get overwhelmed by that, I'll tell them, okay, just quit the soda. Just stop soda. I don't care if it's regular soda with the deadly to man high fructose syrup, or whether it's artificial soda with the deadly to man NutraSweet.
Right.
None of that's good for you. Now that and I was a recovered addict. I started every day with a Diet Coke and went to bed at night with a Diet Coke.
Mhm.
When the Boy Scouts used to do bottle drives, they would just stop at my house. And I would have enough bags of bottles, and that was it. Go, here you go, boys. See you next month.
Yeah,
But
right.
now that I'm reformed, I look at that, and people put the glass and go, heck, what are you eating that's black? What are you drinking that's black? Stop it. So
Yeah.
I think that we have a long way to go, and why some people believe that the coronavirus is going to be very bad in America, because our fundamental health at the molecular level is so terrible. We eat so much crap that how can you possibly expect this situation to work well under strain? It's like looking at a cinder block wall. It should be 90% block and 20%, 10% mortar.
Right.
But imagine if that wall was 50-50. Well, in the individual cells in your body, these alive, electrically and electronically charged cells, they have these membranes, these fat membranes, bilipid membranes, that are supposed to have a certain ratio, 1-to-1 of omega-3 and omega-6, with a little omega-9 thrown in. But instead, the ratio is 1-to-20. When your thyroid hormone tries to that cell and work, it's working through this distorted architecture. When the insulin attaches to the cell, when the calcium attaches, when the magnesium attaches, when vitamin C attaches, when things try to attach to the cell, when sugar attaches, it's working in an altered environment. It can't be optimum. And that's what we've done to ourselves. And the only answer is we've got to change what we're eating. And we knew this, and the ancient Greeks knew it. Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so powerful, and it's been so overlooked for so long. Part of my I don't have any data for this. I'm sure you know about this. It seems like a lot of this changed back in the early 70s, mid 70s wasn't there some decision I don't know if it was Nixon or somebody who signed something into legislation, and maybe that's when the carbs became the thing and fats were no good. And then we got into the sugar thing and carbs forever.
It was, in fact, they had a nutritional committee in Washington, and I
Mhm.
think it was McGovern, or maybe it was McCarthy, one of them that said, we need some facts. We need to give recommendations to the American people. And the scientists at the panel said, we don't have the facts yet. And Ansel Keys, made famous by K-rations in the war, went to Europe and studied a bunch of countries and measured saturated fat and mortality from heart disease. And he found a correlation. The higher the saturated fat, the more heart disease. And he came back and brought that to the American educated system. And therefore, the committee said, avoid saturated fats. Well, when we look at that data again and look at a bigger data set, he actually looked at 14 or 15 countries, and the opposite was true in many countries. France has a very high saturated fat rate and has a very low heart disease, despite the fact that they smoke like fiends. This was shown in country after country. There is no correlation with saturated fat and heart disease. And this then perpetuates the myth that cholesterol is bad for you. This chemical, which is in breast milk, which the brain has to have, it makes its own cholesterol. The brain has 4 fats, arachidonic acid, cholesterol, EPA, and DHA, 2 omega-3 essential fats. So it has to have cholesterol. And yet cholesterol, from some early studies in Framingham, was vilified. And the effort's been made to lower cholesterol in almost every American since then. And your doctor doesn't even look at you.
Mhm.
He looks at a piece of paper. Oh, your cholesterol is 240. Without looking at you, he's reaching for the prescription pad.
Wow.
Take this medicine for the rest of your life. Never stop it. And if it has a side effect, well, we'll give you some other medicine for the side effect. We've got to get your number down. Not we have to improve your health. We've got to get your number down. That you can't talk today about cholesterol. I tell them, look at the great works of Dr. Malcolm Kendrick in England. He wrote a great book, The Cholesterol Con. He wrote Statin. He wrote Doctoring Data. Fantastic observer of the fact that doctors are not great with statistics, and we have been influenced by the big pharma to prescribe. And I think that statins are way overused, and I think that the rationale for statin use is very limited, certainly in primary prevention. If you've already had a heart attack, then there's possibly a role for statin. And certainly no one listening to me should stop taking their medicines without their blah, blah, etc. But anyone who looks at the cholesterol issue realizes that it's a hoax. In fact, the most recent study, called the NHANES study, was a huge epidemiological study all across America, and it asked people questions about their diet. How many bananas did you eat in the last week? How much cereal did you eat? And honest with you, that information is complete garbage. No one can recall it a week ago. I can barely let you know what I had for dinner last night, not
Right.
3 nights ago.
Yeah.
I don't trust any of that. That's when you get the coffee is good for you, bananas are bad for you. That literature, that epidemiology literature, is terrible. But the NHANES data is linked to a data bank that links the person's cholesterol to their death. So this one researcher looked and said, okay, I don't care about any other data. I just want to look at the cholesterol rate and the rate of death.
Mm-hmm.
And he did so. And he found that for people over the age of 50, the higher your cholesterol, the lower your death rate. The lower your death rate from heart disease, and the lower your death rate for cancer in particular. So that high cholesterol over the age of 50 is protective. I see so many people in their 80s who've never had a problem with their heart, especially in the nursing home with dementia, taking these drugs. We are a pill-popping nation. Most people over 50 are on 5 to 9 medications, and they just keep, and it's like a trained seal. They just open up and take another one. Well, my blood pressure's not good. Okay, give me another pill. No, wait a second. Your blood pressure was good when you were younger and healthier. What have you done wrong to raise your blood pressure? What's out of what? As Linus Pauling has said, and Sherry Rogers reiterates, all disease comes from some deficiency of one thing or an X other. I mean, that's all anything that's out of system can be. And doctors, unfortunately, are not trained to think that way. What's the symptom? Here's a way to cover the symptom up, which is why our healthcare system is in complete disarray. We spend, 17% of our gross domestic product on healthcare, and we rate lower, 43 in mortality and overall healthcare satisfaction. Terrible. The amount of money we spend, everyone should have their own private doctor and have a nurse coming to their house and check on them weekly.
Right.
But if they did, I'd want that nurse to go to their kitchen cabinets and get rid of all the cereal and get rid of all the grain-based products and start getting some, more basic nutritional stuff. But even there, you can have a problem. As Sally Norton points out, you can have people that are eating complete vegetarian, eating super healthy, and poisoning themselves, not by lectins, as Dr. Gundry talks about, but by these naturally occurring substances called oxalates, which are found like in spinach, rhubarb, kiwi, and like collard greens. Now, I don't eat much of those, but I know a lot of healthy people that say, oh, that stuff's great for you. But in excess, that builds up this 4-carbon compound in your body and produces a myriad of illness. So even people that are trying to eat healthy, unless they really have help going through the subject, can feel badly, which is why I don't laugh at people that do the carnivore diet. So I listen to the vegetarians, I understand them. I listen to people that they think that plants are dangerous. I understand them. But I certainly understand the people that do carnivore, because although that's a sustain in the long run, if you have inflammation, if you don't feel well, the only way to prove that some plant is a cause is to get rid of all plants. And I've known people that have really improved their health dramatically by doing that. Again, I don't think that's an ideal long-term diet, but it's an absolutely logical diet short-term. And I haven't put anyone in the hospital with that diet. I haven't put anyone in the hospital on the keto diet or a low-carb diet. I haven't admitted a single person to the hospital with intermittent fasting. And yet we are putting people in America today every day in the hospitals with suffering from the standard American diet. And that is so-called poisoning. And when they go in the hospital, what do? We give them hospital food, which is worse.
Oh, yeah.
I see the sign in the elevator at my hospital, the power of food. To myself, God, they're finally starting to get it. Then I look at the menu. It's a breakfast pizza. It's pecan pie. It's custard. I said, you're poisoning my people. You look at the machines that they have, the vending machines in all of the local hospitals.
Yeah.
What are they vending? Gatorade, Mountain Dew, Doritos. No, if it ends in an O, Dorito, Oreo, Cheeto, Frito, you probably should think twice. Have it on your birthday. And the whole concept, you go to Denny's, they have these a stack of pancakes. It's a cake, for God's sakes. Is it your birthday? If you put a candle on it, let's blow it out. If it's not, you shouldn't be eating that crap. But yet, people tell me it's cheap and it tastes good. And I tell them, and I line, pay the more now or pay the doctor more later. And hey, we have plenty of doctors to take your money. Come on in. Who's next?
Yeah. So this just brings up a lot of thoughts. I'll just mention again, my son's a doctor in Atlanta. I know that when he went to med school, he had one class for one semester on nutrition. That was it. Now he's gone off and done his own research, and he knows a lot more than your average MD about nutrition. And I'm glad, because he'll advise people. But it seems like, besides the training that you don't get in medical school still about an actual healthy dietary lifestyle, big pharma plays a big role, I would say, right? And then what about the insurance companies? Are they dictating anything about, this gets into a little more of the business side combined with the care side, but is there a protocol you have to follow to, lessen the malpractice lawsuits or anything like that? Because, well, I should have gotten this pill and every other doctor will give it to me, but you won't. And how much of a role does insurance play in this for you?
Well, insurance plays the same role it always has. Big farmers played the same role. In fact, less role. They used to be able to take you out to dinner and maybe, teach you to a game of golf. That's all gone. We can't even get pens from them. If I worked as a concrete manufacturer, I could go to Puerto Rico with the Concrete Association, but not as a doctor. That's fine. That's not. But big pharma and big insurance are crazy. I don't know if they're working together, but they certainly aren't trying to advance the cause of patient care. The insurance companies make us go through ridiculous rituals. Like, for instance, if you have knee pain, there's no way your regular X-ray is going to show me why you're having knee pain or shoulder pain. I need an MRI for those two joints. I always need an MRI. But the insurance companies say, no, you have to do the regular X-ray first. It doesn't matter what the results are. The results could be anything from perfectly normal to obvious bone cancer. Either way, they're still going to pay for the MRI. Mm-hmm. Now, I guess they assume that some doctors are just going to say to the patients, oh, forget the whole thing. But I can't do that. And I don't think any doctor working to do that. So the insurance companies don't tell me what I have to do. They just tell me what order I have to do it in. And sometimes they try and limit the medicines, but that's why doctor burnout is so high, because there are so many different forms, so many things I should just be able to sign, and this is the way it should be, have to be reviewed by a nurse, and then by a nurse manager, and then maybe by a doctor. So the hazard factor in medicine has never been higher. When you go to your doctor, unfortunately, I cannot convince my colleagues to get a scribe. That is, have someone else enter the data for you. You did not train to have your face in front of a computer and typing away while the person's telling you their life story. That's ridiculous. There are things you must have from eye contact. Hire a person to do that because that's what they're best at, and free you to perform a proper function. How does a doctor differentiate himself from a nurse practitioner or a PA? He's supposed to have better knowledge, or more in-depth knowledge, hopefully more experience. You're not putting that into play when you're typing stuff in front of the computer. So I tell doctors, you've got to make a change. You don't have to necessarily make less money. By using Scribe, you're going to improve your happiness, and that's going to improve your ability to do your job right. And it's going to make people happier too. So you'll never see, I think, a modern doctor should not have his hand on a computer. And that's another problem with our profession. I can't.
Yeah. It's interesting. Well, first of all, when your name comes up in any conversation anywhere, it's always a good thing. People like when they see you. Sounds like you take time with them, and that's something that's missing too right now in the medical world is time to listen and relate and help.
Well, now you're raising a whole another issue, and that is I do my time, but I also charge the hell out of them to do that. So I have a concierge practice, and
Yes.
so
Yes.
to be able to spend a half hour with a person or an hour, I got to charge them more. There's no way around it. And
Yeah.
there's lots of different concierge practices, but mine, I think, has really evolved into that. Listen, I can't help you unless I know you, and I think you're going to trust me more if you know me. And if I know that you've got a cat named Maurice, or that your brother-in-law has been sleeping around with the mailman, and we've been taking this story back and forth, that enables me to have, I think, more of an impact on your life. Why take, as I tell people on the radio show, I'm a stranger to you. Listen to me. You should listen to me. You should go and do your own independent research. Will the COVID virus last 3 weeks? Or will it last 18 months? Nobody knows. Did it come from some bat soup in Wuhan, or did it escape from a viral lab? We're not going to know years. But don't trust me any more than you trust the nightly news. I love what the great poet and philosopher Denzel Washington said. If you don't read the papers, you're uninformed. If you read the papers, you're misinformed.
Well, there's another topic too is information, how it gets out, who's delivering.
Look at the information in your own nutritional school. And I hate to say this, I took nutrition classes at Cornell, but I did poorly in them, I might add. But the whole nutritional curriculum in America is tightly controlled by one organization with an agenda. And I won't, people start thinking, oh, he's going to talk about the Illuminati, but the information is out there. All you have to do is research the Kellogg family, and you'll see the night all nutritional training in America since that time. For further evidence, look at the case of the Tasmanian surgeon, I think, what's his name, Gary Fatke, or the guy in South America, Tim Noakes. These are doctors that were censured for giving nutritional advice, for having the crazy idea of telling diabetics, you'd probably be healthier cutting out the sugar. And for that, they were censored by the nutritional councils. And that's what this whole story, going back to the Kellogg Foundation. It's quite scary when you get into it.
Interesting. Now you got me curious, so I'll be looking that up. But yeah, I mean, the program that I went through up at SU, I learned things, there's no doubt, but I'm not sure what I learned, how much of that really applies to.
Well, let's see what you learned. What did you have for dinner last night?
Last night, you don't want to know what I had for dinner. Last night was a big cheat night.
So what'd you have?
Chicken wings.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
How can you in good conscience gnaw those little tendons off them? How do you do that?
I might have to edit this out. No, I won't do that. No, I don't know what, twice a year or something, and last night it hit. I did it. But you know what I have been doing lately? I have this app, and actually I've done this on and off for a while, but I reloaded the app here a little while back. It's called Inflammation Tracker. It's that one, Inflammation Tracker. And so it's not the greatest app in the world, but what I like is when you put a food in there, like I'll show you. This is kind of interesting. You put in chicken, let's say. The first thing it's going to give you is, and I don't know why, it's going to tell you Applebee's chicken tenders. Okay, well, here you go. Applebee's chicken tenders are so inflammatory that they fall into the reddest of the red on the rating scale. So anything under less than 0 is inflammatory. So what I started doing was on and off here, and just recently after the hip surgery, I don't know if anesthesia messed me up or what, but man, I've never been under before. So this was a first for me. Except for, not totally under. Vascular surgery, yeah, I was under, but I was also awake enough that I knew what's going on a little bit. I was completely whacked out. My taste buds changed after all the blood clotting last year. After the anesthesia from the hip replacement, taste changed a lot again. But I also was extremely achy all the time, everywhere. And not just my hip, which hurt like crazy for 2 weeks, but now it's amazing. I went on there and I started eating things that are anti-inflammatory. I had to remind myself, what is anti-inflammatory? Because I didn't remember from school, and they actually didn't really teach that in school. They taught about eating portions of carbs and healthy fats, and healthy carbs, healthy fats, healthy chicken, but healthy is subjective to certain entities. If you're going to eat chicken, where did it come from? Was it what do they call those? There's a really cool, funny website, but it's serious, called the Matrix, and it's about industrial corporate farming. It's a takeoff on the Matrix. So the cow plays the part of Lawrence Fishburne, whatever his role is in that movie, and so on and so forth. And it talks about, we didn't learn much about that up there in that program. Cheerios were still a good thing.
Well, Cheerios still are a good thing to the vast majority of Americans. And I don't go down the aisle for Cheerios, or I would weep. Because look at this, the Count Chocula, the, what's the ones with the little unicorn on it? Not unicorn, the little Irish leprechaun, Lucky Charms.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there's nothing healthy about that. And again, when I tell people that I'm not a big fan of dairy, in particular milk, even though I live a mile from the Burned Dairy corporate headquarters, I'm not telling them to stop making milk. I'm suggesting export the milk, because American children shouldn't be drinking milk. And then people go, what do you know? And I'm not, this is not me speaking. I'm channeling the experts. T. Colin Campbell at Cornell, Dr. Esselstyn at Cornell, Mark Hyman at Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Doshi, the former head of pediatrics at Johns Hopkins, and most of all, Walter Willett, the most cited nutritionist at Harvard, who just published another article against milk a month ago in the Journal of Medicine, if I'm not mistaken, but I know it's in a major magazine, medical journal. Milk has way too much protein. It's way too inflammatory. I'd be interested to see how whole milk weighed in on your inflammatory meter. I'm going to have to get the app and download it and check it out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, milk is going to show up as inflammatory for sure. I don't drink milk. I haven't drank it in years.
That's another thing I challenge people. Listen, if you want to feel better, you don't have to wait for your cholesterol numbers to come back. You don't have to trust anything I say. You don't have to trust the lab value. You will tell me in 1 month off of milk if you feel better, yes or no. And so far, no one has come back and said it did make a difference, or I felt better drinking milk. They all come back saying, I love milk. I don't like not drinking milk, but I do feel better. My bowels are better. My sinuses are better. I have less indigestion. I've never had a person yet that said that they felt better with heavy diet.
Yeah, I believe that 100%. Interesting. So this has been a good app for me, and just trying to get quality foods. If I had salmon recently, I haven't had salmon in years, and it was really nice, and that's highly anti-inflammatory. Typically, I don't eat much fish because I think it's gross, but that's a psychological problem I have to get over.
No, Carl, I'm completely with you there. When it comes to fish, I don't like where they've been. I don't like who they're hanging out with. I don't like the smell or the taste. I don't like the scales on the outside. I don't like the bones on the inside. I don't like the whole concept of catching fish. I don't like anything about it. Yeah. But I'll tell you this. This is another important point. And a part of what I think every monster's practice has to be. And that is, first you look at the plate. Is there everything you need on the plate? And the second is, like we talked about, you're a big bag of biochemical reactions, are they righteous? Are the omega-3s and 6 good? And if you're eating fried foods, you're getting a lot of 6s. And if you don't eat fish, you're not getting enough of the 3s.
Mm-hmm.
So I recommend to my patients who want to optimize their health that they spend the extra money, have blood work done to look just at that. And you can have that measured. And when I measured mine, I was aghast at how low those chemicals were, the EPA and the DHA that are important in the brain. So that's why I do cod liver oil now. And I highly recommend that people that don't eat fish do something fishy, because fish is brain food. And unless you check your numbers, which even your regular doctor can do now, using Quest Labs, which is a nationwide company, your doctor can measure your omega-3 and your omega-6. And I guarantee you, since you had a bleeding problem, a coagulation problem, your numbers are off. Go get it checked.
And that's a question I wanted to ask you, but I actually really didn't want to talk about me in my interview with you, because this is about you, but not me. But I also know I could speak for many other people who are on Coumadin, which is what I'm told is the best thing for me to take because of my anti-lupus anticoagulant syndrome, which is apparently somewhat rare. I don't really know, but either that or heparin shots in the belly. But I was also wondering, what about what I'm eating? And I haven't found anything. Do you have any advice for people who are in my situation?
Typically, I think the people that have a coagulation problem have a problem with the nutritional status. And I think you've got to go to the doctor and get your omega-3 and 6 measured. You've got to get your vitamin C measured. You've got to get your vitamin A measured. You've got to get your vitamin E measured. And in particular, when we're talking about, this corona calamity we're dealing with, I think that if people, and I was not a huge believer in supplements, but now that I've had a better grounding in the history of modern nutrition, the history of modern agriculture, agricultural practices, that I believe that if you want to optimize your health, you're going to have to take some supplements. And I think especially when you're dealing with viral illnesses, not so much treatment as prevention. You've got to get the vitamin C up to at least 2 grams a day. You've got to get your vitamin D up, which is probably more of a hormone than a vitamin. And your regular doctor will say vitamin D, anything between 30 and 100 is good. So you can have a 31 or 32, and the doctor stamps normal on that, and your chart goes to the next person. No. That's not able. You've got to get your vitamin D 70, 80, or 100. That's a vitamin D that prevents infections in many circumstances. This is something that Dr. Gundry's talking about, Dr. Mercola. I'm not saying that this is a guaranteed sick, but I'm saying if you care about your health, especially if you have concerns about heart disease, you've got to pay attention to your vitamin D, your vitamin C, and your magnesium.
Okay. And you went right into the next question I had. But I'll just tag onto that. Do you have any recommendations on where or what supplements, where do we get these things? Because they talk about, if you get certain ones, they might not really be good quality. They won't assimilate in the body, even if you take them with food. Do you have recommendations on where to get them or what to get?
No, I just think you got to be very. I wouldn't buy anything, honestly, that wasn't that came out of India or China.
Okay.
So I just don't think it's those products. There's plenty of big companies like Metagenics, Pharmanex that sell third-party evaluated, quality-controlled supplements. But the beauty of it is nowadays, you don't have to guess. If you take a vitamin D supplement, get your vitamin D level measured. If you take a vitamin E preparation, you can have your vitamin E levels measured. It's much easier now. And there's a huge amount of fraud and abuse in the supplement world. The consumer's lab thinks that a third of all supplements are either don't have the product in it or have other things in it. No matter how nice the label looks, doesn't mean anything. But you can take your product and get it tested. You don't have to have it chemically tested. You take it and then see if the readings are right.
Yeah. Great information there. Well, I love it. This has been really, really great. I just have one more question, maybe 2 at the most. Let's talk about COVID for just a moment. We've touched on it just a little bit, mentioning it. Any thoughts on? Yeah, I mean, you gave a lot of answers actually just now with vitamin supplements, dietary, getting your chemical reactions right in your body to help fight off virus. Anything additional that you want to share about COVID?
I believe that COVID gives us the opportunity, like never before, to try alternative therapies, and we're going to blow it.
Mm.
We have the option of saying, there's a lot of talk about vitamin C being a life-saving supplement taken intravenously in the ICU. Vitamin C is cheap, and every hospital that has COVID patients could be easily doing an extremely simple test, measuring the vitamin C, giving 50 grams of vitamin C intravenously, which has zero toxicity, and measuring results.
Mm-hmm.
That's an easy test to do. That won't be done. I just listened before this morning. I was listening to an article about ozone therapy and how you can take some blood out of a person, treat that either with ultraviolet light or with an injection of ozone gas, reintroduce that into the body with dramatic results against far more pathogens. And yet that won't be done in America. And we're threatening, oh my God, we're not going to have enough ventilators for grandma. We're going to have to be having these National Guardsmen standing there and doing the breathing for them. Yet we're not going to take these therapies that potentially could be life-saving that have been around forever with no known ties. They're going to be ignored because there's no money to be made in them.
Yeah, money.
Then it would be exciting. But because these therapies are homegrown and that have been around for 50 years, in fact, Tesla patented the first ozone generator, if I'm not mistaken. These have been around forever, and yet they'll be ignored. I think it's shameful.
No kidding, man. I tell you, first of all, you mentioned a lot of great books, names of people who I can research them. So I'm a total geek. Like when I get a book, if it doesn't have a bibliography, I don't usually read it, but then I'll get it and then I'll check out the bibliography and read a lot of that. So
then I can't tell you, if you're going to start researching it, the most important name of all, I think, is Ivor Cummings.
Okay.
Ivor Cummings, no G, Cummins.
Okay.
Because Ivor talks about inflammation in the diet. He's an engineer, not a doctor, but it's all about heart disease. It's all about chronic illness, and it's very easy to understand. He's got a great accent, so it makes it more enjoyable. It's a wealth of easily digested information, and he interviews everybody. Wow. Ivor Cummings is the man.
Oh, I appreciate that a lot because a lot of my people who watch my interviews, they'll be really interested in this. Very.
And let me close with this, and you can't hear Ivor and not hear this. The most important test an adult can get of their health. The most important test an adult can get to their health is a calcium score of their heart. There is no other test that's as important. It's cheaper than a stress test. Often people have to pay for it. It's a CAT scan of the heart that can show heart disease decades before they're aware of it. Decades before, so they can do something about it. Change their diet, change their health.
Beautiful. Thank you. My last question was going to be, do you have a takeaway message? You might have just given it. If you have anything additional, you can add it. But that was, yeah. So the calcium, what's the name of it again?
It's called the Cardiac Calcium Score.
Got it. Okay.
And you can look it up on the internet. Look up the YouTube video. It's a documentary called Widowmaker.
Oh, okay. All right.
And that tells the story right there. And it's the most important test people can get. But here's the awful sad thing. They're going to have to talk their doctor into it.
Oh, right.
The doctor is used to doing stress tests, and he's going to say there's nothing wrong with you. And you're going to say, I'm concerned hitting heart disease. This is the best test available. I've never ordered it before. I don't know how to order it. I don't know how to interpret it. I'll handle it, doctor. Just order me the test. Let me look at the results, and that's all I need.
Beautiful. Wow, man. Well,
I take your health in your own hands. If you trust your doctor, he's going to keep working on your illness. You've got to work, Carl, on your wellness.
I hear you on that. I appreciate that information and everything you shared. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time. And hang on with me just for a minute. I'm going to say goodbye to our folks. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this. I know I did. And I don't know, I needed to hear all this again. And hearing it from you, Dr. Berry, it's been really helpful to me. You know, they say the teacher appears when the students are ready, or whatever that is. I've read a lot of this stuff. I heard about it. The other thing I know is as I start to gain an understanding, sometimes a certain book or delivery of the information will help me to tie in a lot of other stuff and have a better understanding of what I've learned previously. That just happened for me. So thank you. And
thank you. Great day.
All right, my friends. So folks, thanks for watching, and have a fantastic day.